we need to talk about streaming. And I know everyone does this topic to death. I understand it is one of the most common things in the physical media and entertainment space. But we need to talk about streaming. The problem with streaming is that when it first started, everything was on Netflix and you could get just about anything you wanted on Netflix. And while there were options other than Netflix, in Australia we had something called QuickFlix, which was basically like a I think it was kind of partnered with Netflix, but it was a way to get into Australia without actually being in Australia. And since then, there's been so many streaming services that have popped up. I think the first one was Netflix or QuickFlix or something along those lines. But since then, we've had so many streaming services pop up. We've had Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, Stan, Netflix, Amazon, Binge, Foxtel if you still got Foxtel. There are just so many different streaming services, and in the US it's even greater. There are even more. There's HBO Plus. There's HBO Max. Sorry, but you have all these different streaming services, and it begs the question: why do people just stay with these streaming services? And I know people are going through their month to month and cancelling services and getting them back on for certain shows. I know that is a common trend. But the problem I see with streaming in particular is that it's almost like the .com bubble of the late 90s. Something's got to pop eventually because it's become to the point where everyone wants to have a streaming service and nobody wants to spend $400, $500 on having every service you can imagine. I mean, I'm sure there are people out there who do it, but the average consumer is probably going to only want to watch one or two shows. And as you can tell, I'm a physical media collector behind me, so I made the choice a long time ago to limit how much I stream. I still do use streaming for certain things, so there are certain exclusives that I cannot get on physical media. And if I want to watch them, I'll watch them on streaming. I'll get it on for a month and then watch it. I think I did that with The Crown, the last season of The Crown, and I only got about halfway through it because they split it into two halves. I binged the first half and then I went back to watch the second half because I was like, okay, cool, well, they're going to split it up into two now. I don't care. But that's the problem. The dilemma with streaming is that there is just too much of it, and they're gonna crash the market like they did with the .com bubble. And everyone had a website, and everything was so overinflated, and everyone thought it was worth more than it was worth. What they needed to do, and this is going to be a controversial opinion, they need to employ the same thing that cable did for many, many years, and what Australians will recognise as what Foxtel did for many, many decades, which was, yes, well, this is the thing, it's more expensive. Foxtel was always more expensive, and that put a lot of people off. But if they can find a price point like $60 a month and you get all of these services, you get Disney, you get Binge, you get Stan, you get Netflix, you get all these services, so on and so forth, Paramount. If they can find some sort of deal like that where you get everything for like a set price and everyone gets like the $10 or whatever, but they have an ongoing subscriber base, so meaning you lock it in for a year and you have it on every other month for that year. If they employ that into streaming, it may work. Now, Netflix have found a working strategy, which was ads. And YouTube has been doing this for many, many, many years. Ads can make the service cheaper. And I get it. Nobody likes ads. I get it. Ads are annoying. They pop up at the most inconvenient time. And, well, the whole thing with ads is that they just kind of interrupt the flow of the video. Unless they're planned in there, like, is what I just did then, because, I don't know, maybe I will monetize this, and there'll be an ad where I just pause for a second. But you know what I mean. That works in part of the flow of the video. What's annoying is, like, you get to a crucial moment, and then an ad just pops up, and it's like, oh, God, I'm in the middle of this, and then this had to happen. But Netflix have found a way around that and have really worked it into their strategy to where it doesn't really interrupt the flow. They'll find a moment where it doesn't really interrupt too much or intrude too much. And most people are going to be happy if they tell you, okay, this ad is going to go for 60 seconds. Most people will be like, cool, I'll just use my phone for 60 seconds. And, most people are just going to be okay with that because they're getting a cheaper price. Now, I know the Jolly Rogers are out there. We all know you're there. We know the other option. You don't have to keep telling us. Just go and do what you need to do. You don't have to tell everyone that you're so good because you hoist the Jolly Roger and sail the seven seas. Cool, dude. We think you're cool. Whatever. Go over and do it over there. We don't care. But if you want to have on a streaming service, then yeah, I think it needs to go back to the cable model and say, okay, you'll have it on for a year. You'll pay a set amount each month, so it won't go up and down from year to year. You'll just pay a set amount and lock in the price for a year. Have it on a contract that you sign or whatever, that it's locked in for a year like cable used to do. And it was like, okay, it won't move for that whole year. Because streaming services just keep getting more and more expensive. And because there's so many of them, we can't keep up with where our content is. Except if you go back to physical media like I did. I can keep a track of it because it's all on my shelf. And that's what needs to happen, because right now, as I mentioned, .com it's going the way of the .com bubble. And because there is so much content out there and so much streaming services and so many people wanting a piece of the pie, so to speak, it's not sustainable. It simply isn't. Because the average consumer doesn't care to spend $500 each month on streaming services. And it's not $500 now. I know you have your big streamers and that'll only cost you about $50 to $100. But I'm talking about the people who have everything on, including Foxtel, including cable, including whatever. I'm talking about those people who just have everything on. The average consumer is not going to want to spend that much. And it's just a reality. Like the best move Foxtel ever did in Australia, so Foxtel is our equivalent to cable. That was our cable network in Australia. It was owned by Rupert Murdoch and his team. I don't know if it was fully owned by Murdoch, but I think it was a dual deal with Telstra. I think Telstra and the Murdoch organisation News Corp owned Foxtel. But the past year or two, everyone has noticed this strategy from the Foxtel group to focus on binge. And Foxtel essentially is on its way out. It's still there for now, like Foxtel is still around. But definitely binge has become the priority for that company, and I think a lot of people are noticing that it's become the priority. But when you go outside of that, Foxtel, I've even seen, are offering subscription options that include Netflix. And they're like, oh, if you get on this tier of Foxtel, we'll offer you free Netflix access for a year or whatever. That's where it's going, and the cable networks are really paying attention to that right now. Like, I think in America they've also mentioned that you get Disney Plus in some subscriptions, or you get HBO Max or stuff like that. Because money can be made and users can be retained for a longer period of time if there is a deal where they know they're getting a deal and they're going to keep them on anyways and watch all the catalog that way. And it's just a better option. But obviously, look, there are too many streamers. There are way too many. It's just not sustainable. And while it's not sustainable, what is going to happen is you're going to see users become frustrated with it more and more, and then just say, oh, well, I don't care about Disney, I don't care about Netflix, I'm just going to keep on Amazon and just watch The Boys or whatever, I don't really care that much, I'll watch whatever's on Amazon. And they'll just keep that one service on, whatever's the cheapest, and watch whatever's on there. And if it's not on that service, unless it's something that lures people in, like a Star Wars or a MCU or a Netflix, a Stranger Things or a Crown, it's not really going to move the needle, and it's not going to bring people to your service, because we've hit this point now where shows are becoming more and more expensive to produce. Stranger Things is ending in the next season because obviously the actors are a lot older, they want to move on to newer things. But also, I'm thinking, I don't know how much the cast want for that show, but obviously you'd have to think they're the main stars of that show, they'd have to be getting paid accordingly. And then you have this whole thing with the unions in America where people want a cut of the pie who acted on that movie and worked on that movie. And obviously the unions are fighting for that, and I believe they may have got a compromise from the studios. I'm not 100% sure on what was agreed to in America. But I know the strike was over, and that's something was compromised from both ends. But there is a time where studios just need to work together. Disney needs to work with Netflix. HBO needs to work with Amazon. Or Disney and Warner Brothers need to work together. Imagine that. If Disney and Warner Brothers work together, imagine what we could see. Like James Gunn, if, let's say the DCEU, or whatever you want to call DC's new universe, let's say DC decided, okay, James Gunn used to be with Marvel. What if we lend Henry Cavill's Superman to Deadpool Part 3? And everyone's saying, oh, he's a Wolverine variant. How cool would it be if Superman showed up on Deadpool? Or if Deadpool showed up in the DC movies as like a multiverse thing? There is potential there. But it's determined on studios working together. I mean, in recent years, we've seen Sony and Disney work together in terms of Marvel. So it is possible. Sony and Disney, two who you'd never think would work together for Spider-Man. Obviously, Sony basically owns Spider-Man. I think they own him till the end of time, or at least until they stop using him for 5 consecutive years. I think that was the deal. You have to use him within that time period, otherwise it reverts back to Marvel. But obviously, they're going to keep coming out with games and movies and so on and so forth because they own that IP and they own it right now. But without having Spider-Man connected to the MCU, it would have been a lot harder for Sony. So they connected it to the MCU. They connected Tom Holland to the MCU. And MCU Tom Holland is Spider-Man. But then they've also got these 2 other Spider-Men over here that they're kind of like playing around with and tried to bring into the MCU too. So they could go off and make an Andrew Garfield movie, or go off and make a Tobey Maguire movie, or go off and make a Venom movie, or go off and make whatever. Anything that isn't Madam Web. Sorry. I haven't seen that movie either. Who has? That's an old Ricky Gervais joke from the Golden Globes when he was talking about The Tourist. I haven't seen The Tourist. Who has? Well, yeah, I haven't seen Madam Web. Who has? I mean, I heard about it. I don't really care to see it. And that's the mentality I have towards movies these days. I don't really care that much if it's something that I don't want to watch. I mean, you can tell me like, oh, Endor, you need to check out Endor. It's so good. I don't care. I will watch it. I mean, it's coming out with a 4K release probably next month. I'll pick that up and I'll be like, oh, cool, I have Endor here. I'll watch it on a rainy day. I still haven't even got around to the 2nd season of The Mandalorian. Like, I just don't care. I'll watch it when I feel like it. And people say, but, well, spoiler alert for The Mandalorian. Spoiler alert. So I'm going to talk about it in 3, 2, 1. So yeah, you can tell me, Luke Skywalker shows up at the end of Mandalorian and it's so good now and you need to watch it. And then they ruined it in season 3 from what I heard. But I will watch The Mandalorian as I see fit. I watched season 1. I thought it was alright. I didn't think too much of it at the time. I was like, cool, it's a decent series, well put together. Compared to everything else Disney was putting out in recent years with Star Wars in mind, it worked. But it's not something that I'm going to go out of my way to watch. And it's there if I want to watch it. I've got The Mandalorian up there on 4K. I've got it ready to go. If I want to pull it off the shelf and watch season 2, it's there ready to go. It's just a matter of, I need to find the spark to want to watch it. Like for years and years, my friends were telling me, I need to watch The Boys. I need to watch The Boys. I need to watch Homelander. I need to watch The Boys. And for years and years, I was just like, I have superhero fatigue. It's just too many Marvel and DC on at the moment. And then my friends just kept on me about it. You need to watch The Boys. You need to watch The Boys. And then eventually I just had the spark and I was just like, you know what? I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to watch the first season. And at least if I hate it, I can tell my friends I've at least tried to watch the first season. And I got hooked on that show. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. So you have to be into it and you need to want to watch it. But this is the thing with streaming services. A lot of the time, if it's not readily accessible on a service they're already paying for, the average consumer, they're not going to care. They're just not going to go out of their way. You need to hook them with something that they really love, that you haven't done severe damage to make them care. I mean, Star Wars at this point has lost a lot of its aura, and it feels like it is I don't want to say a chop shop or something, but it feels like it has been chopped together for so many years. It feels like it is kind of like, oh cool, well, J.J. Abrams had this vision for the last 3 movies, the trilogy, the sequel trilogy. And then they put, what's his face in there? What's his name? The guy who directed Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Let's get it off the shelf if I can. It's stuck in there pretty good, so I don't know if I'm going to get it off. Oh. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? And I know you're probably screaming at me through the screen right now. Rian Johnson. That's who I'm thinking of. See, I didn't even have to look at the cover, really. But yes, Rian Johnson. Honestly, that Rian Johnson movie gets a bit of a bad rap. Because, yeah, you could have had Snoke come back, and you could have had this, and you could have had this, and this, and that, and then Palpatine come back out of nowhere, because why not? But I think Rian Johnson was like, no, I'm going to tear this whole thing down and try to give him something that is unique. And yes, the whole Princess Leia flying through space thing was kind of hilarious. But at this point, look, they ruined that. They ruined the Star Wars back in '97 for me. Like when they said you're never going to be able to get the theatrical versions again. These will be your definitive versions. Yeah. Well, that's when they kind of started ruining it for me. So, anything that came after that is like, cool, I'll take it on a case by case basis. And, I hated Episode 8 at first. The Last Jedi to me was a not too good movie. But at the end of the day, I kind of like looking at that movie as a standalone. It's alright. Like, I can watch it as a standalone now and be like, oh, cool, okay, whatever. But it's not so much that I hate this movie and everyone who is associated with it must leave Hollywood. It's like, no. You're telling me you've never made a mistake? Like, come on. And I think, yeah, Star Wars is in need of some revitalization and just some love. It needs some love from creators and it needs some love from the studio to go, no, we're not going to release anything Star Wars related for 10 years. And we're really going to focus on the manga. Like in Japan, what they do is they let the manga get ahead of things sometimes. Like Dragon Ball Super, I'm a fan of Dragon Ball. And yeah, they let the manga get ahead of the series for Dragon Ball Super. And obviously, rest in peace to Akira Toriyama, who died this year. But Dragon Ball is a great example. Like, obviously, they finished with the tournament arc, and then it went on to, yeah, whatever it needed to do. But the series continued on the manga. And I want to still see a TV show around that. We're getting Daima soon, Dragon Ball Daima. And I'm hoping that's the last thing Akira Toriyama worked on in terms of a production, I believe. And we're going to see that. And I do want to see where that goes. And I'm hoping that it'll pick up some of the arcs that were in the Super manga that weren't adapted to TV. And we'll do some of that. But look, maybe it just needs to come down to shelve it for a bit. And we're talking about Star Wars, but this is another thing. I'm talking about streaming services and ruining certain IPs to where the fan base don't care anymore. Shelve it for a little bit. Let the fan base say, okay, we're working on a new property, but we're going to make sure that it's everything you wanted, and we're going to make sure that it is up to scratch. We're going to make sure that it is doing justice to the universe. That is where I believe it needs to go. Stranger Things, they need to take their time with that last season. If they need to delay it and make sure that the final season is good, because you don't want to get into a situation with Game of Thrones. Which, yeah, everyone knows how that show ended, and yeah, the less said about that ending, the better. But that's what I mean. If studios just take their time and pair together all these services, so everyone has access to the back catalogue through a subscription service that takes a subscription yearly, and then everyone has access to everything, and they don't have to switch services month to month because everything's too expensive. I believe the streaming dilemma can be fixed. It's just a matter of studios need to work together. And that's the reality. If studios don't want to work together, everyone's going to lose a lot of money. Because consumers are going to be like, oh, why do I want to have 17 different streaming services? And I don't want to pay $6 here and then $8 over there and $15 over there and $20 over there and whatever. Consumers don't want to do that. Consumers just want to say, oh, cool, I want to watch Stranger Things. I'll get Netflix on for that 1 month and then I'll cancel it. Or I want to watch Wednesday on Netflix. I'll get that on for that 1 month and then cancel it. Or if they want to watch The Boys, I'll get Amazon on for 1 month and then cancel it. If it was a yearly deal where it was like, oh, you get Netflix, Amazon, and Disney, most consumers would say, oh, what's the price for that? $25, $30 or whatever. Cool, yeah, I'll do that deal. And if you need to get ads during that, then fine, give them ads. But most consumers will go for that deal. And because 3 studios are working together, everyone gets their money, everyone's happy, and obviously the unions will need to know what's being watched at how many hours, and get paid accordingly. Obviously, they should be paying the creators. But I'm going to leave it there because I feel like I've ranted on for 20 minutes and I haven't even talked about really the topic of streaming. But hey, that's just my mentality on streaming and ruining IPs and whatever. If you enjoy this video, like, subscribe, notify, leave a comment, talk about Dragon Ball, rest in peace Akira Toriyama, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.